Hi, everyone. So I am Dr. Courtney Ruggles, and I am going to be your professor, or I am your professor for Intro to Social Work, SWK21103, Section 01. You will see on the screen the book that I do require for our class. It's Introduction to Social Work and Advocacy-Based Profession by Cox Tice Long. Get this as cheap as you can. But it is required because we will use this book for our quizzes and our tests and all of our lectures. You're going to want this book. So order it already, or order it if you haven't already, because it's a very important part of our class and you are going to be very thankful that you have it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little introduction. Remember that we will not be meeting face-to-face the first week of classes, August 23rd through, I think it's August 26th. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, 27th, but we don't have classes on Fridays. Unless labs. But anyways, so we will not be meeting in person. We will be having online classes, which these videos are part of. And I will have online, I will have little asks in each of these videos for you to follow through, and so that way I can count your participation in the first week of class. I also want to give a little bit about me, and especially if you don't know me, if you've never had a class with me before, and also give you a little bit of an introduction to what this class is going to look like for the rest of the semester. So the first week of class, I'm actually going to be out of town. I will be in San Diego, but I am going to be reachable. So if you need anything, please email me. My email is cruggles, so oh gosh, I can't even spell my own name, sorry. CRUGGLES@rio.edu. And you can email me at any time. That is my best mode of communication when I am not on campus, or if you can't find me on campus, please email me. I'm pretty much checking it constantly. So I've been teaching at Rio for a little over 2 years now. I first started at Rio almost 3 years ago in the position of the Director of Accessibility and Mental Health. That position is no longer. Now it is the position of the Director of Mental Wellbeing, and I was really happy to be able to have a hand in helping form that. However, I did transition over into being a full-time professor here, a full-time assistant professor, and I'm very happy about it. Social work is a huge passion of mine. I absolutely love it, and it's weird because I did not wake up when I was getting ready to graduate from high school going, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to be a social worker. I had no idea what social work was, had never even really heard of it. And it wasn't until my probably my junior or senior year in college when I said, you know what, social work is it. What I went into college for was sociology. I was going to, learn about society and then go become a lawyer. And that did not work. So I do have a bachelor's in sociology. And it was during my time in my undergrad that they introduced a minor in social work. And I learned that I can do counseling because I was really interested in counseling, that I can do counseling with a social work degree. And I was like, this is fantastic. That's what I'm going to do. So after I graduated with my bachelor's in sociology, I had to go and get a social work degree so I could become a licensed social worker. So I went on to my master's, and I got my master's from the University of Kentucky, and became a licensed social worker after completing that program. Well, it was during my master's, I was like, I really want to become a professor. So I had made the pact with myself that I was going to get my doctorate. And it took a minute. I took a year off in between my master's and my doctorate. Actually, it might have been 2 years. I can't really remember now. But took a little bit of time off, and then I went and completed my doctorate. In my career as a social worker, I started out in behavioral health and did a lot of counseling, a lot of case management, brokering. The types of counseling that I did family counseling, I did grief counseling, and I also did motivational interviewing was like my thing, and I would train colleagues in motivational interviewing. I also was very involved with crisis intervention. I would go into the hospitals, the local hospitals, into the local jails to assess for suicide risk assessment and intervene in that way. And so that has become a big passion of mine as well. After that, I taught for a few years at another university part-time, and then I went into hospice social work. So I became a medical social worker in a hospice setting, and that was such a rewarding and eye-opening job. I really enjoyed my time working on hospice, which is not something that you expect to hear, and it was not something that I thought I was ever going to say. But I really, really, really enjoyed my job as a hospice social worker. And then I came to Rio and was working as the director of mental health and accessibility. And so you will hear me talk about some of my stories. I do have some really great stories of working with my clients and, how you use the change process and, those kinds of things. And so you'll hear some of my insights and perspectives and things on those. Now, as I am a professor and doctor in social work, I am very involved in suicide prevention and suicide interventions on a macro level. And right now that means nothing to you when I say macro, but it will in a few weeks. Macro is when we're talking about working with large groups of people. And so just a few weeks ago during the summer, I actually met with members of Congress to discuss suicide prevention policies and programs that we could try and implement at the federal level. And I also did the same with state representatives and met with some reps from Ohio to discuss those same initiatives in our state. So those are things that I do. I also run a couple of events here on campus, specifically the Out of the Darkness Walk, sponsored through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I'm a board member for that organization in Ohio as well. So part of our program that makes it so exciting, I think, that I really enjoy about it, is that Professor Joviak and we are your two main professors for the program of social work here at Rio. And he is very clinical based or micro based, working with individuals. He still does counseling and things and contracts in that way. And so you really get that clinical sense with him where he's focused on. And I do have that history. That's where I started. And that's where I kind of started to grow as a social worker. So I have that experience as well. However, where he's more focused on the clinical, I am more focused on the macro. So I teach our policy classes and I teach how to get involved in that way so you can impact policy, which we know impacts many people. I also work with communities and doing community interventions and things. So whereas he is really, really micro and individual focused, if small groups and families, I am much more communities and state and national level interventions that we can do as social workers and as a social work profession. And so you really get that overall generalist social work education from both of us having these two different focuses and experiences. And so that's really neat about our program. This class is lecture heavy. I do want to tell you that, but it's also, with social work, we talk about the issues that are going on in the world and how they impact people and how we intervene and how we help people live their best lives to the fullest quality that they can. And so we do talk about some controversial issues. And we'll talk about how the profession defines those issues and how the profession deems that we should intervene. And also, just developing our professional identity. That's what this class is about, is, teaching you about the history of social work and how we've come to be who we are. We'll talk about the fields of social work, and there are many different fields of social work. You heard me, I started out as a behavioral health counselor and moved on to being an adjunct professor and then went to be a medical social worker. And I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you can do, and it's amazing. one thing I do tell my social workers is once you decide that you want to be a social worker when you grow up, you still have to decide what you want to be when you grow up, because there's so many different options in social work, which is really great. And there's new fields popping up. We even have a national organization for sports social work, which I think is so cool. And so we have quite a few options in our profession, which makes us really neat. Another thing that's really cool about social work is that we are the only profession that with a 4-year degree, once you become a licensed social worker, you can provide counseling. So that's really neat too, I think. So if you have any questions about that, we are going to get more into that in our chapter 1 discussion, which will also be a video that you will be able to link to on YouTube. And we'll talk a little bit more about those fields and things, but that's going to be a common theme throughout this entire semester. Again, we will have a lot of debates and a lot of discussions, and there's quite a few numbers in this class, so I'm very excited about that. But that also means that we are going to have conflicting and varying viewpoints, and that's totally fine. But what is not fine is that if we do not treat with each other with respect. Okay, so no matter what, we are going to treat everybody with respect, and really start developing those professional skills that we're going to need as full-blown social workers. Okay, again, if you have any questions or anything, please email me. My email is cruggles@rio.edu.